No person ever fully discovers and develops all the potential within himself until he expresses his faith. How one woman tapped the power within. As a fitting climax to this chapter, study the story of a woman who carefully took stock of her abilities and circumstances, and who took matters into her own hands and shaped a glorious future. Explore her secret of success. Look deeply into every word. If you can do this, if you can lay your finger on the key principle that took her to the top in her profession, you can equal her achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. My grandmother epitomized the person who constantly searched inside for strength. Barbara Gardner Proctor, says Barbara Gardner Proctor. Though she was deeply religious, she never asked the Lord to do anything she could do herself, and she taught me many values, foremost of which was to simply keep the faith. Barbara Gardner Proctor was born in a forgotten small North Carolina town choked with poverty. The house where she lived had neither running water nor electricity. She never knew her father. Her mother, whose sights were focused elsewhere, left the raising of her child to her mother, Barbara's grandmother, a dynamic woman with strong but tender hand. Coralie Baxter would share years of wisdom with her granddaughter. She was loving and affectionate. Beyond that, she was strong-willed and courageous, says Proctor. She had plenty of dignity, pride, and was inner-directed. My grandmother never misunderstood or misjudged me. But most important, under her influence, I learned that unfavorable circumstances, for the most part, are temporary, and they can be changed simply by keeping the faith. Adhering to her grandmother's wisdom, Barbara Proctor would change her life. In her grandmother, Barbara had a most enthusiastic champion who would urge her to attempt great things. Miss Baxter's beliefs in personal excellence caused her granddaughter to view her life and surroundings in an entirely different light. Always an excellent student, Barbara received a scholarship to a small Talladega College in Alabama, where she majored in both English and psychology. Through hard work and determination, she graduated in 3 years. Because she had a head start on her future, campus life seemed snail-paced compared to the lure of the big city. So she packed her belongings, bid her classmates farewell, and headed for Chicago, where she searched for opportunities. Her search did not come easy. Barbara would spend the next 3 years careening from job to job, from freelance writer to disc jockey to Girl Friday, looking for anything to hold her interest and give way to a career. Her wandering came to a halt when she was contacted by a local advertising agency that needed the services of a young, energetic copywriter. Barbara knew very little about advertising, but was willing to give it a try. And besides, based on her talents and creativity, she thought she might be able to tackle the job and make a name for herself. She joined the small but reputable firm and pushed forward. Her instincts were right. The advertising business intrigued her. She was attracted to the industry by a convergence of factors: products, personalities, creativity, and constant challenge, all squeezed into fast-paced deadlines. Writing ad copy can be tough, but to this self-starter, it came naturally. Barbara put her skills to good use. She turned her imagination loose as her employer assigned her to work on high-level accounts such as General Motors, Procter & Gamble, and Coca-Cola. In 5 years, she worked for 3 different agencies, learning the business from the ground up. By 1969, she was earning more than $40,000 a year, and her future never looked brighter. I was a hot property, she mused. She became the first black advertising executive in Chicago. But rougher waters loomed ahead. It was the 1970s, a time of increasing social consciousness and awareness. Everything and everybody appeared to be making a statement. Advertising became receptive to the images of the day, and Barbara Proctor seemed especially in tune with the times. Uneasy with the long-term impact of her company's ads, she refused to work on several socially unpopular ad campaigns and was charged with insubordination. Regrettably, one thing led to another and she was eventually fired. Out of work and with few options for the future, she began to question her life's direction. Her grandmother's teachings began to cross her mind as she looked for another career. After months of soul-searching, Barbara came to the realization many entrepreneurs have. There is room for only one dream in any organization, and from this moment on, that dream will be mine. She desperately wanted to be her own boss. Having mastered her trade, Barbara was convinced the time was right for an ad agency that addressed the needs of the black consumer. She studied the spending habits of black Americans and knew that manufacturers could not afford to overlook this expanding market. Black consumers are different from white consumers, she explained. They have different tastes, different preferences, and much more brand loyalty. With proposals in hand, Barbara presented her ideas to the top ad agencies in Chicago, but received no takers. Unemployed and with dwindling funds, she decided to start her own firm. She approached the area banks and similar lending institutions, but encountered only more frustration. Her difficulties increased as potential money sources closed their doors while creditors closed in. Down to a few dollars, she sat numb and motionless in her Chicago apartment, fearing the worst. Emotionally spent, she asked for divine guidance. In my hour of need, she recalled, I found my greatest strength to be my grandmother's values. Keep the faith, she told me, keep the faith, regardless of the appearances of things. Over and over, I recited those 3 words, keep the faith, until my answer came. Short on collateral, but long on faith and hope, Barbara applied for a loan from the Small Business Administration. Since she hoped to start a service business and had no collateral, she normally would have had little chance to acquire such a loan. But with faith, the tide shifted. She audaciously persuaded the loan officer to ask the heads of three of Chicago's leading advertising agencies what salary they would pay her if she were an employee. The answer came back, $65,000, $80,000, and $110,000 respectively. In a whirlwind 24-hour period, Barbara Proctor obtained an $80,000 loan, enough to keep her fledgling agency going until she landed her first 2 accounts, Jewel Foods and Sears Roebuck and Company. 20 years later, Chicago's Procter & Gardner Advertising has become a small but respected firm with an estimated $15 million in annual billings. The company's original 2 clients are still on her client list, which also includes G. Heilman Brewing, Alberto Culver, and Kraft Foods. Many years ago, Coralie Baxter told her granddaughter of her priceless gift. She also taught her to apply this life-saving principle throughout her life. Some people seem to use this power instinctively. Others have yet to learn it. And still others, the vast majority of us, have never really begun to use this tremendous power at all. The principle that I am trying to emphasize is the power of faith. The moment you apply the power of faith in your life is the moment you will begin to step ahead of the crowd. 2 facts stand out in Barbara Proctor's rise to prominence. First, the circumstances in which she found herself as a child might have discouraged the average man or woman from pursuing his or her dreams at all. And second, through faith, she was able to withstand the challenges of a major crisis. There is nothing new about the principle of faith. It may be applied by anyone who makes use of desire and belief as strongly and intensely as Barbara Proctor did. One of faith's stranger features is that it generally appears because of some emergency that forces men and women to look beyond the power of of the ordinary thought for the solution to their problems. It is during these emergencies that we draw upon the secret power from within, which knows no resistance, great enough to defeat it. The scripture says, according to your faith be it unto you. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and deprivation. Search until you find the secret power that dwells within, and when you find it, as you most assuredly will, you will have discovered your true self, that person who you were meant to be. Chapter 5.